Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 14 of Entrepreneur Gains, where I interview Y Combinator alumni. On today's show, I have Ruben Harris, founder of Career Karma, the easiest way to find a job training program online. They help over 1 million workers navigate their careers every month through advice and coaching. They recently raised their Series A round of $10 million and are growing and hiring fast. In case you want to be a part of a high growth startup, you can check them out at careerkarma.com/company/jobs. Before starting Career Karma, the founder started a podcast called Breaking Into Startups. In this episode, I dive a lot into the podcasting world and how they were able to grow their podcast and transition it into a startup and help change people's lives. I hope you guys enjoy it. Hey, Ruben, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Really excited to have you. I'm a new podcaster, so I know you guys are like you've done over 100 episodes, and I'm so excited to learn more about the podcasting and how you evolved that into a business. But I want to first start with like what is Career Karma, the YC company, the company that went through YC.
Yeah, so Career Karma is the easiest way to find a job training program online. So we're a marketplace that matches workers to job training programs so they can quickly get jobs in less than a year. Rapid reskilling is one of the most critical issues of our time, not just economically, but also politically in the United States and all over the world. And what people don't understand about career navigation is that um, it's not enough to help people find the school and the financing for their career journey. They need to have the support systems in order to find the right people that have a shared struggle, the right mentors that can help them psychologically get unstuck, and the right referrals to help them get employed. So what makes Career Karma unique is not only will we match you with the right training, but we put you into a peer mentorship group called a squad to give you support during the program, during the job search, and for the rest of your life. So community is our secret sauce. And we started with boot camps in technical and non-technical roles. So you can be a salesperson, you can be an engineer, you can be a designer, a data scientist. But the vision is to create the number one destination for career advice on the internet, so anybody can become whoever they want to be and connect to the right people, the right places at the right time, forever.
I love it. Such an amazing goal. And one thing I really love, by the way, is I was talking to I had Kong from Jump Cut on the show a couple of episodes ago, and he was talking about how 56% of college students they drop out within the course of 6 years or whatever. And he was saying how in US, and he was saying how because the college is preparing you for jobs, not preparing you for jobs, it's giving you education which is basically useless in the real world. A lot of them, not all, obviously, not all programs, but a lot of them, and how how specifications and boot camps and stuff like that are the future, right? And people are realizing that, and I love how you guys are bringing it all together and getting people more educated while building a community on hey, figure out who you are, get more self-aware, and then go do rather than wasting your money, and also saving time and doing something you love, kind of thing, and it also will pay you money when you do get employed. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody's looking for a one size fits all solution, but education is not a one size fits all solution, right? We're all different people,
Yep.
right? And so college might be right for somebody, but it might not be right for someone else. So I want to make it very clear we're not anti college.
Yep.
Like we're also not pro boot camp. We're pro people,
Yep.
and we want to make sure that those people find the right things that they need at any given time, right?
Yep.
Like so a very common thing that we say is boot camps and colleges come and go, but Career Karma is forever. And I know I said that there's no one size fits all solution in education, but there is a one size fits all solution for career navigation, and that's Career Karma, which is why we're positioning it to bring all things together to help people have that guided pathway to get to where they want to go.
Awesome, man. Any numbers you can share, any kind of customers, money raised, sales, anything like that?
Yeah, so we raised about $12 million in the last 2 years. We did Y Combinator. Last year, we also got selected as a Reforce partner. Um, Initialized Capital led our recent $10 million Series A round that we just announced. And you can see the rest of our investors on our website. Gary Tan is now on our board. We have placed over 3,000 people into job training programs and helped them in the last year and helped many of them get jobs at companies like Stitch Fix and Tesla and Gemini, which actually equates to about a $300 million impact if you think about them getting a job, making about 100,000. What's cool about that impact is that many of these people have gone on to also buy their first homes, and they would have never been able to be a part of the American dream without our help. Just to keep doubling down on numbers. We're also blessed to be in a position where we have over 1 million people a month that come to Career Karma for career advice. And while those numbers sound big, we have a long way to go because we have a mission of getting to 1 billion people in the next 10 years. But we're happy about our traction so far. Revenue's been growing by 20% monthly over the last 6 months. We've also been profitable for the last 5 months. We plan to continue to blow numbers out of the water and using these new resources to help people and hire a team that is committed to connecting the world's talent to the next opportunity.
So amazing, man. Congratulations, by the way. That's such a cool
Thank you, man.
Milestone. Yeah. Cool, man. I want to learn more about, before I get into more questions, I want to learn about your journey. Like you were into banking after you finished university, and then you transitioned to tech, which started this whole thing. So tell us more about it. Like what happened and how did you move into tech, and what made you want to move into tech?
Yeah. So in college, everybody wanted to become investment bankers or consultants, which I did. And then while I was in banking, I was an investment banker for 3 years. The tech industry started taking over, and one of our buddies became an investment banker. And I mean, he became an engineer. He quit investment banking, became an engineer 3 months later. And we were curious about how he did that. And he did it by going to a boot camp. And he was in the same cohort as one of our current angel investors named Jack Altman, who's now the CEO of Lattice, but he also did a coding boot camp. And he also was in the same cohort. He was also an investment banker as well. And so that's when while we were in Atlanta, Georgia, we discovered coding boot camps. And boot camps are a very new education model. They've been around since about 2012. But what was unique about boot camps is that they're the first rapid reskilling model at scale that rivals the higher ed system that can take anybody from knowing nothing to something and quickly getting money in a short amount of time without going to college. Like kind of like the reason why someone wants to be a movie star or an athlete or a musician is because they know that like it doesn't matter how hard their life is. If they practice, they'll be able to take care of their family and move out of the hood, right? Yep. And so I was like, wow, like this thing can really help people. And since there was about 50,000 people that graduate a year from colleges and about 35,000 people graduating a year from boot camps, we were like, man, if we learn more about what's happening here, the rest of the education system is probably going to copy them because this $1 trillion education bubble cannot last forever. It's going to pop at some point. And when it does, everybody's going to be saying, yes, education is important from a human perspective and a networking perspective and a broadening your horizon perspective. But at the end of the day, people are paying money most of the time because they want a job. Right. And the people that have been doing this consistently for years with a deep alumni network is boot camps. So let's make boot camps our beachhead market. And then if we master that, then we can do it for any skill set as the rest of the industry catches up. And so long story short with that, Career Karma is a product that we wish that we had when we were breaking into tech. Yep. Right. My co-founders did boot camps. My brother, who's right in front of me, he did a boot camp. I did a boot camp for entrepreneurs, which Combinator is a boot camp for entrepreneurs. Yep. Techstars is a boot camp. 500 Startups is a boot camp. Don't get it twisted, right? Yep. It's job retraining is a huge growing trend, and every education player is getting in the game. Yep. And not just education players, companies themselves are getting in the game. I know you've seen Guild Education. I know you saw Google Certificates. I know you saw Amazon launching Amazon Technical Academy. So this rapid reskilling issue is a big deal. And so even though there's all these options that are out there, people are going to be confused just like how we were confused. Yep. The advice that was given to us was move out to the West Coast to break into the tech and everything's going to be okay. It's a magical place.
Yep.
But that's terrible advice.
Yep.
Like I quit my job and I had a place to live for a month, right? And I told my mom, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'll be back. And I didn't come back.
Yep.
I'm gonna see her at the end of this month, so don't think I forgot about mom.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you know, that's not good advice for most people. Like,
Yep.
and so once we were able to get to where we wanted to go, we said we need to put more structure around this, which is why we started the Breaking Into Starters podcast to share our story. We started sharing stories of everyday people like you and me that figured out how to break the tech. So people know that like these aren't just larger than life figures. This is attainable. You can have like New Year's resolutions are around the corner. You can do this next year, right? You should drop this before 2021 so people can start planning it, right? And
100%.
then
Yeah.
we go in.
Yep.
So that's how it came about.
Love it. And so before we get into the career karma part, because first you started the podcast, right? Because you like when you were able to do it yourself and you moved to the West Coast and you were able to get a job within 3 weeks, and you were like, I want to help other people do that because there's no structure. You started a podcast just to basically put out your findings or like what you were learning out there, right? And how did you maintain to have the discipline? Because I mean, to continue above 100 episodes, like because in the start, I'm guessing it didn't pay the bills. Like podcasts have not like it doesn't pay you anything. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort to put So how did you keep like what was the discipline? Where did that come from?
Yeah, we never created the podcast to make money
Hmm.
in the beginning. We launched the podcast December 2016 while we were working in companies like Archer was at Funding Circle all the way to IPO, building out their financial marketplace. My co-founder, he did Hack Reactor. The other one was at Timur Meister. He was at Blipper. They did augmented reality, and then I was at when we launched the podcast, I was at Honor at the time. I was at All School before that, and then Hustle. But at Honor is when we launched the podcast. But before launching the podcast, we recorded 30 podcasts.
Okay.
Right. We said before we launch this podcast, let's create a nice library.
Yep.
So that we become the Gucci Man of podcast. Right.
I love it.
And we're gonna hit everybody over the head with we're gonna drop like 2 to 3 podcasts a week. So when we launch, like not only did we launch, and I'm actually give a huge shout out to Kim Cutler, who's now on a board observer with Initialize with Gary Chan. She actually helped us get introduced to the people at TechCrunch and establish a really strong relationship with TechCrunch. And we were able to drop, I think, 12, 13 articles in TechCrunch for the Breaking the Starters podcast early on. Just really giving everyday people the shine that they deserve. Right.
Yep.
That was a beautiful thing. And I want to give a big shout out to TechCrunch for also helping us do that. Like we have really great stories of people like Rodney Urquhart, who was a high school dropout in Philly. We have people like Kenyatta Leal, who was locked up in prison, that San Quentin prison for a long time. We had Divine, and we had like every story you can imagine. We had Rocio, all these stories that really inspired a lot of people. And yeah, so that's how we started was with the podcast.
That's so amazing, man. And so would you say the biggest the initial push came from that like the TechCrunch like to get like to the push to because I mean you guys have done what like you've had like 3 million people like I think I checked when you said something like reach us 3 million people.
Yeah. So that was we created 30 podcasts. TechCrunch helped, but we also had help from a bunch of publications, Black Enterprise. I forgot a bunch of other really awesome publications because we didn't want to just be in the mainstream tech. We wanted to be in the hood. We wanted to be like in the platforms that people are actually going to read, the local news, like everything, so people can understand that this is us. This is for us, by us. Like Damon John says, for us, by us, right? Fubu. So that's why we wanted to do it early. When it comes to consistency, that's the hardest part of anything. We read a lot of the stats that talked about the importance of going through making sure that like podcasts have. There's not a lot of podcasts that have gone above 5,000 listeners. So in order to do that, you have to keep dropping episodes. Right. And so we just kept that in our head and kept doing it. Like after running Career Karma, it's been a little harder to keep up with the podcast dropping, but we're going to be doing more of that soon.
Yep.
But in general, it's as a musician who worked in the music industry for a long time, Um, I understand the importance of dropping music, especially being in Atlanta where mixtapes are a very big thing,
Yep.
and you're always dropping content.
Well, it's a concept of consistency, right? Like in like example, going to the gym, like the if it's the habit of just going every day. Like even if you don't push it 100%, you still see the results. It's like just doing it every day. It just becomes a habit, and at one point, in one point, you see that transition. But at the same time, like what like, so publications being one, was that like the major 80/20, like the 80% of the growth, and that we were doubling down on that, or was it like some other kind of channel that was?
That's all it is, man.
Wow.
Like at the end of the day, like it doesn't have to be a perfect piece of content,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It just has to be content. And then when you drop the content, you just want to get slightly better every time.
Yep. Kind of.
Even if it's 0.5% better. Like
Yep.
literally that's all it is. And it doesn't even have to be a crazy intense cadence. It doesn't have to be the two to three podcasts a week. It
Yep.
could be a podcast every month. It
Yep.
could be a podcast every 3 months,
Yep.
right? Like whatever. It's kind of like running. I'm currently watching this running anime called Run with the Wind,
Hmm.
and something that it talks about is like first you want to figure out what the distance feels like with your body, right? But something else that it talks about is running at a pace that you could keep up for a very long time, right? So when you're thinking about consistency and like long distance running or cross country running or whatever, any type of thing, let's just keep it focused on content. Pick a pace that you can maintain consistently
Right.
for a very long time
Right.
without fail.
Right.
Without fail. That's the key. And then just hold. If you do that, you will win. Because
Makes
most
sense.
people don't stay consistent.
They give up. Yeah, exactly. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's a concept of like I remember Gary Vee talked about this where he was talking about Justin Bieber and he was saying how at the end of the day you keep on putting it. You only need one hit, and as soon as you get that one hit, like it's game on, right? It changes everything.
And
Um.
I learned that from Atlanta. Like a lot of the artists that before Atlanta was a thing or before like mixtapes were a thing, um, they they would just focus on putting together the best album, which at the end of the day is very important. And they'll drop an album like maybe every I don't know every other year, every 5 years, every 10 years,
Right.
right? And then it's like milk that,
Yep.
which is good. But then you have you know artists like Lil Wayne,
Yeah.
right? You have artists like Future,
Yep.
like
Who are
artists
just
like
dropping
Two
all the
Chain,
time. Yeah.
like you got DJ Drama, you
Yeah.
got the affiliates, you got all these people that are just like dropping content constantly.
Yep.
But most of those records aren't hits,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But some of them will be hits,
Yep.
and it's just about making like one of my good friends, Two Chain's managers, former Two Chain's manager's name is Charlie Jabali. He's now calls himself Charlie Rocket. He will say music is alive, right? You can't let it just like sit on a shelf and die. You have to put it out there. So whatever
Yep.
you create, just put it out there and let it live. Like whatever that life is, just put it out there. And there's some worlds where that's debatable.
Yeah.
In some contexts where that's debatable, whether you're going to ship something fast or slow. But in general, at least for us, when it comes to content, we don't overthink it. We just turn the mic on and we go in.
Interesting. I love that, man. That's cool. That's really cool. Talking about like I was talking about Gary Vee, and so you guys had Gary Vee on your show, which is
Mm-hmm.
so cool. How were you able to make that happen?
Yeah. I got flown out to this thing with Black Enterprise. So shout out to Black Enterprise again. Sequoia Blodgett, who I also got to show love to. She's now at I think M13, which is a venture capital firm. She invited me to this Black Enterprise Entrepreneur Summit. So we went to VaynerMedia office, and there was me and a bunch of other Black CEOs. And Gary had us at a round table that was live streamed, kind of like it wasn't like Shark Tank. It was like the opposite of Shark Tank. It was more like, hey, talk to me about what you got going on, and I'm going to commit to help you guys, right? So everybody went around the room and shared what they wanted to do, and what they were working on, and I shared about the podcast, and then I said, hey, this is what I'm working on, and what I would love is if for you to be on it.
Yeah.
And I asked it publicly, and he said yes. Um, but then like the coordination of the schedules was very difficult. Like I followed up the next day, but it took some work to make it happen. And if this is what made it actually happen, he was coming to town to do an event at Draper University, And I told him, look, man, I know you're going to be at Draper University. I'm going to make this easy for you. I'm going to pull up on you. Can we record then? And then he said yes. And so D-Rock was there. We were all there. I had my crew there. We all put up our cameras and we recorded it, and it was a beautiful thing. So shout out to Gary for hooking that up. That was a beautiful thing, and he followed up on what he promised.
That's amazing, man. I love that. Actually, one thing that I'm seeing a common trend, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I think I think, and I know where I think I know where it comes from. I think the fact that your vision or your mission is so amazing to give people value. I feel like I feel like when you connect with other people, they want to help you meet other people because you're so like you're not trying to like make money. You're not trying to like I want fame. You're like I want to genuinely just help. And I'm seeing that a lot of things. Like you gave examples of the publications, and you give example of like of Gary Vee, for example, or other examples as well. Like I feel like it's this crazy, there's this crazy contagious energy around it when you're talking about, hey, I just want to help people get jobs, and I want to help people like be better, and like not like they don't in today's world they don't need to really like do the shitty job and like work 3 jobs and pay fuck all when you can legit just like do a year of like some kind of specialized skill and make so much money. And I feel that is very like that is very contagious.
You're touching on something very special. That's like a secret that I've said publicly for a
Mm.
very long time.
Yeah.
I wrote it in my first blog post, I think, or my second blog post. The first one was breaking into startups. The other one was the reality of breaking into startups. It's actually in the second one
Okay.
where Archer Timur and I are talking about each other. So the line is, if you have a compelling story, complete strangers will go out of their way to help you.
Yep.
If you have a compelling story, complete strangers will go out of their way to help you. Okay.
That's amazing.
Now, as you think about that line, that applies to not just uh, podcasters, but also to job seekers, to students, and to entrepreneurs. From an entrepreneur perspective, you always want to remember that the best marketing is a mission. A lot of people think like right now when we raise a Series A, people are like, oh wow, you got $10 million, like, oh, you're gonna hire all these people, like how are you gonna compete in the market? Like, yes, now we can offer competitive salaries. Yes, no, we can't pay what Google and Facebook pay.
Yep.
But a lot of people aren't just trying to get jobs for the money, right? Everybody can pay them 6 figures,
Yep.
right? Like, you can compete on things way bigger than just money, right? Not just from just lifestyle and benefits. Like, you can compete there too. Where
Yep.
you really want to compete in is like what what impact is their work, like what can they say that they built that actually changed the world, right? If someone joins a team as the first 50 that eventually connected the world's talent to their next opportunity
Yep.
and became something that helped unlock human potential for the first time in history, you think people don't want to hang their hat on that? That's the most compelling thing ever.
Yep.
The only other thing that compares against that is maybe something in healthcare.
Right.
Definitely something in healthcare, right? Other than that, you can't beat it.
Like
And
oh,
so that's how you want to position yourself always. And that's why that's how I've operated too. I like to help people with no expectation of return.
yep.
But when you operate that way, it always comes back, and
Yep.
that's karma. That's what we call career
Oh,
karma.
I love that. There's a lot going on there. My Kong had this quote, and he told me about 6 years ago now, or 5 years ago now, and I still love to this day. Like it's one of the quotes I live by. And he said, best way to be greedy is to be generous. And if like if you
Mm-hmm.
just go with that mindset, it just always comes back. It's like if you don't have an expectation,
Mm-hmm.
it just always comes back.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool, man. So before I want to know, I want to talk more about the storytelling part of it. But before that, I kind of want to finish this podcasting out. Like, so how hard is it to monetize a podcast?
Um, so we never ran ads on our
Hmm.
podcast, so I'm not the best person to talk to when it comes to like thinking about monetization of a podcast. But the podcast did lead to not just understanding what workers need or what people want, but also what schools need and what their main pain points are and what they're willing to pay for. So we did have schools and companies willing to pay. So we helped a lot of companies with job placement. They would pay us contingency fees, like 20% of first year salary.
Right. Yep.
We did have different other resources that would present themselves to be like, hey, can we advertise here to do this and that? That we didn't end up doing, but we're able to get a lot of insight into what was necessary. I think that the person that does monetization the best, that's no longer around. He's locked up. He has a podcast called Tax Season, and his name is Tax Stone. The way he weaves commercials into the podcast is amazing. He's part of the Loudspeaker Network, which I still highly recommend. So shout out to Chris Morrow, A King, Combat Jack, RIP, who's now passed away. But check out Loudspeaker Network. The way that they run advertising is amazing. It's very similar to like how talk show hosts do it on the radio, where it's like a conversation. I think Jason Calcanis does a pretty good job of the way that he weaves in the commercial as a conversation, but it's still very, and this is no shade to him or anybody else. I like the way Harry Stebbings and all the other people do it with the ads. I just like it where it's very conversational.
Yeah.
But I still think that the main way people monetize their podcasts is through ads. And so I would say like study those three people as an example for now. But I'm not the best person to answer that question.
I love what you guys do though, and it's actually funny though because I was thinking about this, but I didn't even write this as a question, and I thought I'm like when I look at your company, it kind of reminds me one of my best friends, she works as a technical recruiter, and they it's her and she works under a company where they basically they are, let's say, freelancers in a way, but like the company takes care of all the structure and like all the paperwork and all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm like, man, this is so cool. What you guys are doing are like that, but at a scale like 1,000x scale. And I think the one thing that's lacking over there is like the trust part and the credibility part and all that stuff and the giving out value part. And I think with your podcast, it's basically a channel to just give out value to get people to first like, hey, trust in us, and like we're not full of shit. We've done all this stuff, and that kind of brings you in the funnel, and that kind of like then when someone's open to that mindset, okay, this is possible, then you kind of give them more resources and walk them through it.
You're touching on something very important. Content is king, and podcast is just one form of content that we provide. Written content is what we provide. We got YouTube videos, youtube.com/career karma. Check it out. I just wrote a blog for the Series A, but like the whole point of the content is to build trust. Right? And to let people know that we are unbiased, right? To explain why we match you to certain programs that have been vetted for quality, to give you examples of other people that look like you that have used these resources to get to where they want to go.
Yep.
Once you build that trust, it's with you for life, but it's also sacred, right? Any slipping on that trust, any type of shadiness will damage the reputation of the entire community. And that's our responsibility as founders to make sure that we maintain that integrity forever.
I love that. And so I have a last question regarding this. Are there, and I know like I think that's probably the best way to kind of go about this, like Joe Rogan talks about it, how like when he started, it was just like him and his friend just shooting shit and like just doing it for fun and like no expectation. And we kind of touched about this as well. You said when you and your friends do it, or you and your partners do it, sorry, it's just more about like just talking, right? It was talking about what we're learning and sharing our thoughts. Out of curiosity, is there anything you guys did like resources wise that helped you along the way, like that you used to learn or to get better or anything like that?
About podcasting? Yeah, there's a guy named John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He created a whole thing called Podcasters Paradise, which is a whole course that he sells on how to create podcasts.
Right.
And it's brilliant because he sells hundreds of them every month. And if you think about 1,000 a pop, he makes $500,000 plus a month.
No way.
Off of teaching people how to podcast.
That's so cool.
and he's a hustler. I mean, I wouldn't say like the content of the podcast that we listen. I don't think we listen to that as much. I know we didn't listen to that as much, but more I think the way that he thinks about affiliate marketing and things like that, it's there. Like, and he makes a lot of money from affiliate marketing there. And content creators in general make a lot of money from the content that they create. That's
Yep.
why, like, if you're creating a platform that uses influencers and creates people that are providing value for your users, you want to create mechanisms that allow them to monetize in your virtual world that you've created. And so I think John Lee Dumas is a big one. My buddy from Software Engineering Daily, that they also taught us a lot of things. Saran Yabarik from Code Newbie, she taught me a lot of things as well. So shout out to her. Um, Lawrence Bradford from Learn to Code with me, she showed us a lot of things as well. Quincy from the Free Code Camp podcast, he taught us a lot of things, not necessarily on monetization, but on how to like build something that
Yep.
reached a lot of people. So
Yep.
yeah.
So cool. Again, I think it's an interesting concept. It all comes back again to the same thing we chatted about before. It's so cool. Kind of move on. Want to move on from podcast to Career Karma. So obviously you saw that there was a lot of value when you did the podcast and the writing and the blogs, and you're like, how can we make this more structured? And that's kind of how is that how Career Karma kind of came about?
Um, kind of. As people consumed the content on the podcast, they wanted more. Like, for example, I did a podcast with a guy named Ty Olatoye. So shout out to Ty. He was at a company called Omni at the time, and this guy pulled up to a basketball court because we used to play basketball in the mornings. And this dude had heard Ty's podcast, and he moved from Boston to the Bay Area to meet Ty to ask him for career advice on how to get a job. And we're
Interesting.
like, wow, that's pretty interesting. Like, people are really serious about getting this career advice to get to where they want to go.
Yep.
And so we're like, are there more people like this? So we kept getting these emails and just different interactions where people, because we're very public about our routine and what we do. I would be at the gym and people would be like, oh, are you Ruben Harris? Are you Archer and Timor? Like, you guys are the guys that run the podcast. Like, I'm trying to do this. Can you help me? And we're like, hmm. So then, long story short, we created a, a chat bot that would point people to the teaching programs for the jobs that they want. And that started working very nicely. But it was only for like super ambitious people, right? Like the
Yep.
people there's only a certain type of person where you could just be like, go in this direction, and they'll be
They'll
fine.
follow you. Yeah.
Most most people need guidance. They need,
Yep.
like, a very common buzzword these days is guided pathways. People need guided pathways. Um, that aren't pure software. You need software that connects humans to humans, right? And so, long story short, um, we started getting people to show up and started to help them. Schools started asking us to pay to get access to our audience,
Yep.
and we realized that since every boot camp, every trade school, every college teaches the same thing. So, like, if I'm a nursing school and I'm running a bunch of nursing schools that teach nursing, there's nothing really that differentiates them outside of some qualitative things like maybe teaching style or learning style or schedule or whatever. But at the end of the day, they all teach nursing, right? Or if it's a coding boot camp, you all teach me how to code, and you all have a history of getting people jobs. But, like, what makes you different? Like I said, like, it might be a living stipend, or you might give me certain type of discounts or whatever. But, like, for the most part, it's the same thing. And so the issue that these schools face is competing for enrollments, right? So they spend a lot of money on marketing trying to convince people to join their program. And the problem with that is one program may not be best for everybody. And so it creates another, more friction on the worker side, because workers are just getting the same message from everybody saying, hey, my school's the best, my school's the best, my best school the best. But is it really for you? So we need to create this middleman that educated people on what this industry is about, how it's changing, the skills that are required, what you're looking for, and make it simple for them to find the best program for them and the people that have the shared struggle that can help them select, stay, retain, find a job, etc.
So I read about in one of your interviews, you said that much of your success you attribute to the skill of telling stories, right? So why is telling stories so important?
Telling stories is important because it's part of sales. It helps people understand complicated concepts in their own language. Right? Um, you're going to be selling customers. You're going to be selling investors. You're going to be explaining things to users, and the the sales term or the salesperson sometimes get confused in the media, like a cheesy salesperson that's just trying to manipulate you and convince you to pay for something that's not legit. But real salespeople, or at least the way that I like to think about salespeople, really have more of a patient doctor approach where they listen to you, they understand what your needs are, they repeat them back to you, and then based off of that information, they explain not just how their product works in order to solve those problems that you just shared with them, but why they recommend certain action items that you should take using that software to address the need. And if you do that well, the people will actually ask you to pay for the product because that's the medicine that they need for their pain.
Right.
Right. That's when it's done well. Um, so going back to the storytelling concept, you know, what we're talking about with career navigation is complex. That's why it hasn't been done before. What people are talking about when it comes to vaccines and COVID-19 solutions, that's complex, right? When what Elon Musk is talking about with SpaceX and reusable rockets is complex, but you have to be able to take complex things and make it simple, which is why Jesus used parables, right?
Hmm.
And Aesop's fables is a thing because they told stories that were easy to understand and gave you the moral of the story and condensed it so that you can understand it. Because if you can't explain it to your grandmother, they're not gonna get it, right?
Right.
Same thing with fundraising. Like NYC, the whole thing is like, don't like what's your one liner? What do you do? Right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you can explain it simply, it's not gonna work. Like I used to say, CareerCom was the front door to the tech industry. This was pre-seed days.
Yeah.
CareerCom was the front door to the tech industry. And I was like, oh man, well, Reddit calls itself the homepage of the internet. Why can't I call myself the front door to the tech industry?
Yep.
Or with this human accelerator, which sounds great from a marketing perspective, but what is that?
Yep.
What is that? Right? Then we were like, Career Karma connects people, Career Karma matches people to job training programs so they become software engineers, matches people that want to become software engineers to coding boot camps and gives them support for the rest of their career. Okay, we're starting to get a little clearer, but still very wordy.
Yep.
Okay, how do we iterate on that? Well, we help job training programs find qualified applicants. Okay, that gives you a little bit more clarity. Who's paying for it, blah blah. And then the other thing is, now we're the easiest way to find a job training program online, right? So you're going to continue iterating on this. Probably next time I do a podcast, probably going to be something else.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's always trying to keep things simple because the people that we're trying to reach that need to know these skills have no idea what code is. So there's no like I can be the best person at marketing talking about a coding bootcamp, but if you don't know what code is, you're not getting in. So you have to tell a story in a way that they understand it.
Makes sense. And I think,
Right?
yeah, it makes complete sense. And I think I also read you said something along the lines of like, um, you guys understood the role coding boot camps played in the labor market, but had trouble conveying that. And that's kind of where you said it's an iterative process. You just keep on trying different things until like, what really simplifies it and really hits home with the customer. Um, how did you learn and get better at this?
Um, by being super nervous and doing it all the time. Um, I mean, in this type of setting, I'm very comfortable. I remember like the first nervous situation I had was my buddy Charles Pridgeon and I we ran this I want to say I ran it. He ran an organization called Black Professionals Network, and he let me work with him and his team to co-organize events. and we would organize events with like 400 black professionals in tech at different clubs in the Bay Area, but made it like really grown and sexy, talking about how to break into tech. And that was the first time I really been on stage talking in front of people. I performed in front of people because I played the cello, but talking in front of people was my first time, and my voice shook for the first time, which is weird because I have a lot. I'm an extrovert and I'm super confident, but like I was nervous and weak on stage. I like ran off the stage like scared. And I was like, hey, wow, like I really got to work on this thing. I just kept putting myself in positions where I could keep doing it and doing it and doing it until I got it down right. And then as a CEO, like your job is to tell the story. So I mean, every time one of your jobs is to tell the story of the
Yep.
company. So anytime people really ask me to do a podcast, it's very rare that I say no. For the most part, I say yes because it's more practice. I usually do it on the weekends, which is not during the work week, which is why we're doing this right now on a Sunday. But this gives me practice, and I'm gonna keep doing that.
Awesome. And so is but I think you also said something about the vocational education. Is that what you meant? Like just practice, or is there something like how do you get better at uh, being able to talk? Right? Is just practice or something else? Would you say goes with it?
Practice is one thing.
Yep.
Watching other people that are great communicators is another thing. So
Yep.
I like listening. I like listening to preachers a lot. The reason why I like listening to preachers a lot is because they know how to tell stories and also um, give you an action item that you have to take right now in order to change your life. All right.
A
So I think
super cool
I think
answer. Yeah.
I think a lot of people when they listen to great speeches, it's very inspiring, but you kind of like don't know what to do next, right? What's beautiful is like there's going to be an altar call at the end of every sermon, right? And so it's super important, or they're going to ask for an offering, right?
Yep.
So you have to like understanding how to do that well is important.
Yep. It's awesome how they go for the close. That's the marketing
They
marketing
go for the
term.
close every time. Yeah, they go for the close every time.
Man, I was watching. I follow Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels, and
hmm
he's got a webinar script, and he's got like 13 types of closes in there, and you're like, man, this guy is like on a different. You know what I mean? Like you're right, but
Savage.
they always have that. Yeah, exactly. They always have that.
hmm
They always like doing something, and they have this structure in place, and they're kind of going about it.
hmm
You're very good at personal branding. Everything I've known about you, you're amazing. Probably one of the best I've seen. What advice do you have for someone to be able to build a personal brand for themselves?
Yeah, I would say ask yourself what you feel you're the best in the world at, and then start talking about it. I think that when you're thinking about building a personal brand, don't try to think about like what do the people want to hear. Like what's beautiful about the internet is like there's things that are so obscure. Like you could talk about the most obscure thing, and there's probably an audience for you, right?
Yep.
So I would if you want to make it simpler, I would say think about what's weird about yourself or what's unique about yourself, and that's probably your superpower and what you want to double down on. Then think about what medium you want to do it on, whether it's audio or video or written content. I would say if I were you, it's probably going to be either video or written because video is going to be driving 75% of mobile traffic over the next few years. But audio, I think, is going to change the game, especially um, with social audio, like stuff that's happening with like Clubhouse and Discord and things like that. So don't sleep on audio.
Awesome. Last question, man. I know you got to go. So, this is a YC podcast. So, advice for someone applying to YC. What would you recommend?
Yeah, advice for someone applying to YC. Um, make sure that you've launched. You're clear on what you do, right? Um, you should have quit your job. Ideally, you have a technical co-founder. Make sure you understand your user's pain, like what they want or what they need. Try to know what the frequency of their problem is. Like, is it just a one-time thing? Is it a repeatable? How do you make money by? How do you solve that problem? Okay, and then how do you make money by solving that problem? I think, and then not, and then when it comes to your team, how well do you know each other? because it has to be deeper than just having a good mix of technical and non-technical people. Like, are you guys friends? How do you guys deal with each other? Like, what does that dynamic look like? If you can clearly and then how big is your market? If you can clearly articulate that, you should be good to go. Most people don't do those things that I just shared.
I love how structured and guided pathways, I guess, it was.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's good to have it come back full circle. Thanks, man. Thanks. Appreciate you doing this. It was amazing. Thanks so much for the advice.
Thank you, bro. Peace.
All right. Take it easy, man.